So we are ready to start the third panel of our conference on academic leadership. That is discussion panel about Ukraine and the role of academic leaders in the peacebuilding process. And I'll introduce you again to Michał Łuszewski, who will be moderating this session. Michał is a professor of sociology at Warsaw University, and he's co-founder of Two Wings Institute. And he also has many personal links, research links to Ukraine. He collaborated actively with a couple of research institutes in Ukraine. So he's in perfect position to lead this panel. And Michał will introduce his panelists.
Thanks so much. Thanks that you join us after lunch and still joining us. It's such a wonderful view to see all of you there, you know, in the midst of discussions and also here. And I'm thrilled and privileged to host our colleagues from Ukraine, Igor and Alona, our colleague from the US, Tori, and last but not least, the president of Ribbon College, which is hosting us today, Lionel Tarasenko. And I will ask you the questions about why we are motivated as academic leaders to be engaged also beyond the ivory tower of the universities, but also what's the hope, what's our hope, and what will be in future. So that's the plan for today. I hope that also there will be questions from you. When I see those questions, we'll create, you know, a big circle of academic leaders thinking about hope and also thinking about our whys. So let me start by asking Lionel Tarasenko, who is also the professor of electrical engineering here, about your whys. Why you were engaged from the start of the war in the question of helping Ukrainian students, Ukrainian researchers. What's your why, Lionel?
Well, as academics, we're rational human beings, but we're also emotional human beings. And I got up early on the 24th of February 2022 because it was my son's 34th birthday. And I was going to wish him a happy birthday on WhatsApp. I never got around to sending the WhatsApp because of the news that was coming through from Ukraine. And of course, we'd all thought it might happen, it might not happen. There was confirmation, very sadly, early in the morning, 24th of February. And then within a day, the first child to die in Kharkiv because of the bombing by the Russians of that city was a young 13-year-old boy called Antony Tarasenko. Same name as me. Same name as me because my grandfather was born in Kharkiv. He was a Ukraine refugee in France between the two world wars and so on. So I told my wife, who's British, I need to do something. I cannot remain silent. I cannot remain just watch what's happened. What can we do? We talked about homes for Ukraine, which was an issue. Now, we live in a village about 12 kilometers outside Oxford on the edge of Rockmore. There are no buses to get here. There's no pub. It's a very kind of isolated village. Lovely village. We love living there, but it would not really be ideal for a refugee family. So we made a decision we couldn't do something for Homes for Ukraine. So what could we do within the university? And by then, I'd already been a professor in the university for 34 years. I'd been head of a department, head of a college, and so on. So knew how we could set up a scheme that would help Ukraine refugees come to Oxford and acquire some new skills that they could then take back and help in the reconstruction of their country. And maybe we can talk about that a bit more later on. What are the various schemes that can help Ukraine and that can continue to help Ukraine now? And graduate admissions were shut because we finished graduate admissions in March for the next September. But I managed to get graduate admissions reopened, and we set up a special Ukraine scheme We had 26 Ukraine graduate scholarships in the first year of the scheme, 900 applicants, and we selected a cohort of amazing graduate students who had a fantastic impact in the university. So it was an emotional response to full-scale invasion by Russia, and then thinking rationally, what can we as academics, as professor of 3.5 decades in university, what could I do through the university structures? And every university is different. So, for example, Oxford doesn't do joint degrees. Whereas other universities do. We can't do joint courses with universities in Ukraine and so on, because it's not actually allowed. And we don't do it with MIT, we don't do it with Stanford. We just don't do it. Oxford and Cambridge don't do joint degrees or either at undergraduate or graduate level. So what we can do is bring people here, generate the funding to bring them here, and deepen our relationship with Ukraine through having these fantastic young people from Ukraine come and spend a year or more. Some of them stayed on to do PhDs and really be integrated with our community and act as ambassadors for Ukraine.
They're talking about the polarity between emotions and reason, and how to leverage them. So this is also, I think, one of wonderful definitions of what's leadership. So heart and mind, compassion and reasoning. This is what our friend Mark Goppin refers to. Professor Anna Revko, Side Business School, you are part of the program Researchers at Risk. What was your journey to that wonderful university?
Good afternoon, dear participants of the conference and panelists. Thank you for having me. And as Michal mentioned, I'm an academic visitor and School Center for Social Entrepreneurship, which is based at Side Business School, University of Oxford, within Researcher at Risk Fellowship Program funded by British Academy and CARA, its Council for At-Risk Academics. And since 2022, 206 Ukrainian researchers have been supported by this program. They are located in different regions of the UK and in 72 universities and different institutions. They do research in different fields and subjects. And of course, it's an amazing opportunity to do research, to investigate another experience and bring this new knowledge to Ukraine, bring back in Ukraine. And if tell about what this scholarship means for me, a lot of things. First of all, it's not only a safe place for me and to my kids, but it's, of course, very important for me because, first of all, I'm a mother. After that, I'm a scientist and different in other roles. But it's also do what I love because science, it's a part of my life. I very often say that it's my crazy hobby because I can do it at night. I like write different articles. I like. Now I'm currently work on a book about social entrepreneurship, ecosystem development, like comparative research, 3 countries, the UK, Ukraine, and Poland. And for me, of course, it's an amazing place when I can unlock my potential according to the situation in Ukraine. Moreover, I'm still working at my university in Ukraine, in the north part of Ukraine, Chernihiv city. It's very close to the border with Belarus and Russia, less than 90 kilometers away. And for me, it was extremely hard to leave my city, which gave me all the time energy and power. And we left my city 2 weeks after war started in Ukraine. For me, it was extremely hard period of time because I didn't understand what to do, how to protect my kids, what to do the next. I really thought that maybe, okay, I will go to Poland at first to my friends. Maybe I stay there for 1-2 weeks. After that, I will have opportunity to go back home. After that, no, probably I will stay here for several months. I will go to England. I have got this scholarship. Okay, maybe half a year, maybe 1 year. But now it's almost 2 years and I still don't know what to do next. So now I really find opportunity how to find more opportunities to improve myself, to investigate this topic and bring something new for my country. Also in Ukraine, I taught students I conducted different courses about leadership. And for me, it's not only about teaching, it's about development for students and with students. So, and now again, I have opportunity to share my new knowledge, my new experience with my students. How does it work, this topic here in this field here in general? And also I had experience to conduct different trainings for different audience. One of them, it was military. So we had in my university project Norway Ukraine. Norway funded this project. It was about reintegration military and veterans to civic life. So what they can do after a war, how they can adaptate to civic life, how they can find themselves. And my blog with this, in my role in this project, I conducted training about business planning and of course about social entrepreneurship. It's like my passion. And really saw that like set up own business, it can be one of the way to help these people, military, to adaptate to civic life. And now currently we have a scientific project in Ukraine. So we, again, it's about participation model of social entrepreneurship development in Ukraine, like determinants to integration military. And now one of the objectives of this project is to create strategy for development social entrepreneurship in Ukraine and how it can help different people, military and people with different disabilities, etc., etc. But I think we will talk about it a little bit later. And for me, this scholarship is probably, first of all, intellectual resilience.
Oh.
So how to find power to still do as much as possible. Because previously I really realized and participated in a lot of different projects in Ukraine. Now it's extremely hard to find power for it.
Yes.
Moreover, I'm here alone with 2 kids. My family is still in Ukraine. And sometimes it's really difficult to combine like my role as a mother, and I can do only by myself eating out here. And of course, probably language barrier still, I still have it. Because of course, professionally, I conducted different trainings, courses, did research in English, but like day-to-day routine in English. So for me, it was extremely like stress, how to manage with nursery, with school, with car. I don't know how in Ukrainian this part of car named, but in English. So yeah, but it's really like intellectual resilience.
Yeah, we recently published an interview with one of our mentors, Martin Seligman, so the founder of positive psychology, and also the man who is behind research on resilience. And I spoke with him about hope, and about the sources of hope. And he told me that Ukrainian hope is realistic. This is his message. And I wanted to ask you, because you spoke so much about love for science, love for your family, love for your kids, you know, how to cherish that love in the face of hatred, in the face of war.
Hope. Hope in a better future for my country. I really like Nietzsche said, what doesn't kill us makes us stronger.
Yeah.
So probably it's our situation. So
Yeah.
if you could manage with this problem,
Yeah.
we really can do a lot of things in the
Yeah.
future.
I see in your strength and love at the same time. So also as a polarity, also once again, polarity. I'm looking at Professor Tori Bokum from Benedictine College and George Mason University, a specialist in peace building and conflict resolution, and also practitioner, scholar practitioner, working with people in prison, but also working in peace building in Poland. And I want to ask you about specific moment in your life, about the canceling of your flight on 26th or 27th of June of February 2022. Why you didn't cancel that flight to Poland?
Well, great question. I have a head and heart story as well. I take students from Benedictine to Poland every year to study the people I call the great souls of the 20th century. I think 20th century Poland is one of the most important historical lessons that we can assimilate. And my heroes are people that are often not paired, like the Nobel Prize winner Czesław Miłosz and St. John Paul II. And I could name many others. So I take my students to Poland to do a deep dive into that history, that story, the amazing people who knew those two gentlemen and could tell us stories about their legacy and their leadership. So I was bringing students 2 days before the invasion. And 2 days before we were to leave, there was the invasion. So I had to cancel the trip because none of the parents wanted their children to come to Poland, and my wife did not want me to come. And so Elizabeth and Mikhail had a long conversation so I could get permission to come. And my wife said to Mikhail that he had to promise to not let me go into Ukraine because, as she said, he has no sense of danger. So that was my concession. I would not go into Ukraine on that trip. But I did come. And Mikhail said to me on one day, he said, I'm glad you came, wear your peacemaker's hat and just observe. And you should go to the Warsaw train station, spend a day and interview people. And I did. And so it's all his fault that my heart got engaged because I came away from that really quite upset. Kind of my worst quality. Some say it's my best quality. It depends on which side of it you get on. Is I really do not like bullies, and I just came out of that experience with a knot in my stomach that I was going to do something. I didn't know what I was going to do. So I for the next 12 months, I was in Poland about 5 different times. I don't work with the refugees directly, but I work with the refugee caregivers and doing some of the things that Mikhail talked about, helping people understand the difference between empathy and compassion, and teaching strategies of resilience. So that's one of the things that I'm working on. The others, I'm in the early stages of building a bridge between my college, Benedictine College in Kansas, and Ukrainian University, because I think the long-term strategy of rebuilding can't just happen with individuals. You need institutions that have strength and have resources. So that's my current involvement.
But you are also a bridge builder. I remember a picture that was painted, and you will tell by whom, of Volodymyr Zelensky. And you brought that picture from Kansas City to Poland and to the ambassador of Ukraine, and then supposedly it was given also to Volodymyr Zelensky himself. But tell us that story of that picture.
Well, I work with at-risk families. About a quarter of our population in Atchison, Kansas, that live below the poverty line, and I work with those children and those families. The other thing I do is I work with prisoners in the nearby prison. So I work with both ends of the breakdown of the success sequence. That is, if people get an education, get a job, get married, have children in that order, there's only about 1% chance that they'll ever live in poverty. And so I'm working with 3 generations that have fallen out of that sequence and trying to get them back on and developing interventions and strategies and ministries to do that. So I work with prisoners, and one of the prisoners is an artist, and he drew this for me. He knew I was going to Ukraine, and he drew this picture of President Zelensky, which I treasure. So I have the original. I made copies, and I brought them here, and as you mentioned, I gave them away. So yeah. Yeah.
So the bridge between a prisoner in Atchison, Poland, and Ukraine was just astonishing for me, and thanks for building that. I'm looking now at Professor Igor Kotsiuba from Durham University. Igor, why you change your schedule to be at that very conference? I know that you are on your way to Washington.
Yeah, basically that's an intention of my work here in the UK. So my story is like when full-scale invasion started, basically my house and my parents near Bucha, and my father basically called me. I'm single parent of 2 kids, so my father called me saying like, Igor, I think like 400 tanks passed near my fence, right? So you better not come here. And then with my kids, so I read the border service explanations who can cross the border. And I had a global talent visa to the UK. And so I decided, and for kids and myself, so there was no home for Ukraine that day. So I decided, okay, let me try to go to Poland. So we went to Poland with kids and stayed a few days. I said, kids, you drive me crazy. I don't know if I want to go somewhere with you, baby. But basically, we started our journey, and there was a ferry from Amsterdam to Newcastle. So we just arrived to Newcastle, and then I found an apartment, rented. And that was a time when there was no flags on the border, right? Like Ukraine, welcome. It was like they just did announcements. There is father with 2 kids from Ukraine. What shall I do? and the other guys asking, do they have visa? Yeah, they've got BRP. And so just allow them to come. And, people were, and all the neighbors around, they were trying to help me solve even problems I don't have. Like, they created problems. They're saying, 2 kids is like really difficult. Just give them to me. I said, no, they're fine. They're not the easiest kids, but so, and then for first month, of course, I was worried about my parents, no connection to them. It was occupied, 2 tanks near the house. But then when Kiev was more or less occupied, I decided, okay, what shall I do here? So I found nursery, I found school. And then I sent just message to Warsaw University, which is nearby, saying, okay, I've been doing this and this and this in Ukraine. Maybe there can be some synergy behind it, right? And they answered, yes, we've got Kara. We are really interested. So we started filling application, and then I became Kara Visiting Fellow. So that was amazing, just because in university I had really full support, because in Ukraine, I had really happy life. I was deputy director of Institute in National Academy of Sciences. We delivered Horizon Europe projects. I ran cluster of cybersecurity. I was co-founder of a few cybersecurity agencies. We did many, many interesting things. Life was amazing. And then I'm in the UK, and I was saying to Darren, yes, I want to be here, but I want to do something for Ukraine, because my team, my PhD students are in Ukraine. Yes, I'm mobile to move here and back, but I want to do something. So I'm super happy that in Durham, first thing, Fiona Hill is our chancellor. Fiona Hill is the most anti-Russian lady in the US, right? And she's our chancellor. So when she comes for a few days to Durham, she says to John, head of Institute of Energy, John, can you, with Igor, work on hydrogen, green energy infrastructure projects in Ukraine? So I'm extremely happy when institution is not saying, okay, we're happy that your academic is here. No, we support you, that we together can rebuild Ukraine, can have projects under Horizon Europe, under Innovate UK, under twinning with university. So we delivered something with the Zaporizhzhia University. And so, I'm extremely happy to be here. I still believe that it's very important to collaborate, and I'm doing this. I'm representative of Ukraine to committee in the European Commission on cybersecurity, fighting for having Ukraine as full partner in European Defense Fund projects. And I can tell you that, again, I'm extremely happy, because in Europe, there was political feeling we need to help Ukraine and be strong together. Now they really sincerely saying, okay, Ukraine, you develop in our cluster of cybersecurity, we've got drones companies. You really develop technologies, nothing else in the world exists like that, right? You really have these unique things like conventional, unconventional threats and instruments to manage them. So that's a momentum. First thing, I'm super happy I'm in the UK and I feel this support of government, people around me, and my university. Second thing, we've got in Europe political understanding that we need to work on ammunition together, research and innovation together, and rebuild everything together. And the US, I'm flying, yes, up 9 p.m. today. I need to fly to Washington, D.C. to talk about human capital, meeting with ambassador in Ukraine house, and then investment. I'm in delegation to Investment Summit Select USA, where we've got startups from Ukraine presenting with the idea that they will penetrate US market, right? And that's truth. That's not cheap labor IT guys from Ukraine. No, we've got technologies quite unique because of the circumstances, right? We need to develop them. We need to test them quickly. Like Thales develops drones, nice ones, but they test it for a year. In Ukraine, it's like made in garage. You know, we've got this flavor of Silicon Valley, you know, like Steve Jobs doing boards, test it right on the battlefield and back. So in France, it's impossible, according to all the. So that's
good.
Momentum. We need to work together, and I'm happy that all of us, we understand and accept that we work together and must work together.
That's wonderful. I was wondering, Lionel, what's your reactions to those stories? I know also from Ukrainian students that you are kind of a godfather for them.
I'm not sure the word godfather, but I would. Yes.
I want to just to put that familiar tone into
Right.
our, yeah.
It's just no. I'm thinking of the films, The Godfather.
Yeah.
It may work.
I hope
Well, actually, yes. Well, I was going to say to Tori Igor to start with. In terms of Durham, the vice chancellor is a very good friend of mine, Karen O'Brien. She used to be. So, do you know you work with her as well?
Yeah, yes,
Good.
she's amazing.
Well, so yes, I know Karen very well. She was head of the humanities division here in Oxford. And to Alona, I was going to say, have you been talking to Oxford University Innovation about social entrepreneurship? Have you talked to them? Oxford University Innovation.
Oh, yeah, all right, you mean?
Yeah, so you.
I had experience to cooperate with them. I conducted several sessions,
Right.
several changes.
So yes, so I'm the senior director of OUI, in one of the other hats I wear. But so even the kind of godfathering type tasks are not needed today because people already connected. But this is what happens with the students. Often they come to me. I probably get about 10 to 12 emails a week. And I would say about 50% of them I can do something. I can't always do things because I don't have infinite powers. But it's the creation of a community. So there are two things which I think is important. The context, Ukraine is sort of almost fallen off the front pages because of what's been happening in Israel and Gaza. And so we have to think of how you can maintain the momentum for Ukraine and so on, given what else is happening. And in fact, I have been criticized because of the statements I made about Ukraine, which I'm not prepared to make about what's happening in Gaza at the moment and so on. Now, I do think there are differences. I mean, what I say to people, if they only give me 30 seconds, I say that what we're doing in Ukraine it's the defense against freedom, all the freedoms that we enjoy, the freedom to have this workshop, this conference today, the freedom to disagree with each other, so freedom of belief, freedom of political views. We have some crazy candidates in our election campaign at the moment in the UK. But
You don't know crazy.
yes, you do crazy big time.
Big time.
But those people are allowed to express their views and so on. And we see Putin going to North Korea. We see Putin going to Vietnam now. People in Russia don't have those freedoms. And what would happen is if Ukraine falls, the implication for the rest of Europe is the Russian imperialism moves further west. And next stop, Poland, etc. And it's very important for people in this country to understand that this has a direct impact on us. It's about Ukraine, men and women, principally young men, are fighting for the values that we all hold dear. And it's very important to keep that in the forefront of the public debate in this country. And so this has been quite a live issue. There's also the issue of the Cara Fellows or the graduate students who come here. Are we creating a brain drain? And it's important that we don't create a brain drain.
Yes.
How can we ensure that although we can enable very bright people like Ilona or the students and so on to acquire new skills, new knowledge, but for the benefit of the reconstruction of their country. So again, that's a very live conversation. How do we do that best? And everybody's got a part to play, and in different ways. And I think what's wonderful about the panel today, we are completely complementary. We are doing different things for Ukraine. And that's the important thing, because we all have to contribute in different ways. And I think what is important in academic leadership is not to look at what Durham is doing or what King's College is doing or what you're doing at George Mason University or George Washington, I think you mentioned at some point. It's actually what each university, each academic center of excellence can do. And it's going to be slightly different for each one. What happened, the university allowed me to set up these graduate scholarships, but only for 1 year.
Okay.
Because what it meant is all the students who came, they didn't pay tuition fees. So it had an impact on the university bottom line.
Okay.
But I was then able to find a sponsor who I think hates Fiona, like Fiona Hill, hates Putin as much as she does. A guy called Alex Gerko, who did mathematics in Russia, then came here, I think 2001, 2002. He's now a British citizen. He has this very successful algorithmic trading company. And for this year and next year, funding graduate scholarships here, replacing university funding.
Wow.
The colleges are still welcoming them and giving them free accommodation and free food. But the stipend and the tuition fees are paid by XTX markets. So this coalition of the willing is very important. It means that by September, we would have had 50 Ukraine graduate students come here at Oxford, quite a number. And they're fantastic ambassadors for the country. So what we can do in Oxford, because we can't sign these partnerships, as I say, even MIT and Stanford are not good enough for us. And I did try when I was Dean of Engineering, I did try to change that, but I couldn't actually affect the university rules. So we're not going to be able to do relationships with these wonderful institutes or universities in Ukraine. But what we can do is bring these very smart Ukrainian people, and as well as it's a two-way process, as well as us giving them extra skills, extra knowledge, and so on. They're fantastic ambassadors for their country, and that's really important. That people like Ilona and so on in the Oxford ecosystem. Yes, of course, it's very important that your kids are happy in nursery and school here and so on, but without realizing it, often you are just wonderful ambassadors. You know, it's my grandfather. I try to be an ambassador, but I'm only kind of remote. I only have a little bit of knowledge of what it is to be a refugee, because he used to tell me stories between the two world wars in France. But first-hand experience, what it meant. You know, one of our students who's now the president of its graduate common room in Oriel College, which is celebrating its 700th year next year or the year after that, Tasia, she was a medical student that finished her medical training. She was a cardiologist in one of the main hospitals in Kharkiv, which was destroyed almost immediately. By mid-March, it was destroyed. So she lived underground for 3 weeks, and before ending up in September of 22 here, she did a master's in genomic medicine. She's now doing a PhD here at the university, and she's the president of the graduate common room in her college. She's just a fantastic ambassador. We had a dinner yesterday for all upstairs, for all the refugee scholars we have in the university, 3/4 from Ukraine, but we have some from other countries. And people like Tasia and so on are just fantastic ambassadors. So it's a two-way process. having people like Alona are very important because it's first-hand experience of what it was to live under bombardment from the Russians. We had somebody who, one of our scholars last year, who's now gone back to Ukraine, was from the Donetsk region originally, didn't want to stay in 2014 to be under Russian kind of occupation, and so managed to leave, get a job in Kiev, and guess where they went to live? Bucha. So they went from Donetsk to Bucha, had to hide for a month, and eventually made it, and they made it to us. Those, when you hear those stories, they have such a huge impact, and so it's very important to have the impact of first-hand evidence for people who've lived through it. I can tell you what it was like either to be underground in Kharkiv or to watch the Russian tanks roll through the streets of Bucha on their way to Kyiv.
Yeah, thanks so much. I would like, before we proceed, I would like to look at our audience, whether do you want to ask some questions, do you want to intervene? Yes, Andrzej?
My name is Andrzej Ryś. I'm Polish, but I am the European Commission since 19 years. I will be a scholar for 9 months, leaving next Saturday back to Brussels. You know, I have a question to all of you because, you know, I also was involved helping by way, you know, it's with my children and kind of still great families living, you know, in our house in Poland and so on. But the question I ask, you know, I'm thinking of Sasha, who is, I think, 16 years old. After 2 years, he speaks perfect Polish. He was traumatized, you know, because they live in Dnipro, and then again, 2 weeks on the ground in the school, bombs and so on. And you know, and think about Sasha, you know, 16-year-old boy, you know, and I love, you know, him to grow. He's growing. He took 3 months to get out of stress and really start to really be free in thinking and working. And what will be the future, you know, next, if the problem with the crisis and war like this is that we always believe it will finish as necessarily next month, next year, and so on. And speaking to my friends in Ukraine, I was a few times there, and I always think, you know, what would be, you know, how we, because home is, of course, you know, great thing, but you know, what's the time frame, you know, how we can, you know, as Igor said, you know, live with today's language and we know what PhDs in university or other things, and things about what 2, 3, 5, 10 years. But you know, because you might have the same question. I'm sure this is you for you, Ukrainians must be the deadly question for what's how we will live with this. What is the best? Because I think I agree with you, Ryan, what you said. We have to continue to live for the future. But what is you feeling? How keep also the lot attention of people, but Ukraine on his track back home.
I can try answer it. So basically, I don't want this years, decades, and frameworks with some stages. So basically, what I'm saying in commission when I'm there, like please, their representatives, right? National contact points for Horizon Europe. I'm saying you can just communicate. Of course, it's Europe, right? You cannot say, oh, it's like the Oracle specific for Ukraine. But at least you can communicate that, of course, for use cases or demo sites for Horizon Europe project. I mean, Ukraine is next dissemination and exploitation heaven for all those research and innovation results we got on the shelves of Commission, right? We can decarbonize industry, we can decarbonize cities, we can transform something, and it's easier than in Munich or Warsaw, just because you've got established processes, bureaucracy, and all those things. So, for instance, I was fighting for this. I've got stories of success. For instance, Severodonetsk, which is in Luhansk, we've got amazing use case for hundreds of carbon zero cities in Europe. So we kind of replicate all these smart infrastructure, innovative elements in Severodonetsk, which is ordinary or less smart, like digitalized city in Ukraine, right? Of course, it's occupied now. We've got theoretical things, but still, it's amazing. We can fit. How can we rebuild? I think it's an amazing opportunity of projects we did with use cases in Ukraine. And Maria Gabriel said it's one of the most prominent results of collaboration of European Commission in Ukraine. I think that, again, Horizon Europe research and innovation is almost the only way for us to rebuild Ukraine and rebuild it now. It's comfortable framework for European companies to collaborate with Ukraine. It's comfortable framework for governments to invest in Ukraine and in many dimensions. So I think that research and innovation and the name why I'm here, I changed my flash because that's exactly what we need. You know, academics must be in this process. Just because if we just invest something in projects, it will have really limited intellectual merits. Impact is the things NSF is saying we need to have from universities when you apply for funding, right? So that's my no framework. We can't wait, right? Russia destroys now. Tanks are passing some fences now, and we rebuild now. Of course, we've got some limitations. We've got threat landscape, conventional, unconventional. We need to take it into account. But we are rebuilding, we're cooperating. And amazing thing, the mood and passion of people in Ukraine, right? I was really, being frank with you, I was really worried I will be excluded from their social group of normal people, you know, just because I'm in the UK, you know, I don't feel the missiles. No, we are still the team. And then I was thinking they will lose the passion to look in the future. No, they are looking in the future. They're working now. They're making new engines for drones, and that's so. I think war creates this pace, which is faster than here and in Europe. We can utilize this space and mobilize the energy of people for the sake of research and innovation and work together. Yeah. Again, it's basically our collaboration with Ukraine can be a definition of word synergy. We all hear a lot, but it's like real on the ground.
So your answer is that the hope is taking place now, and we are rebuilding Ukraine now.
Yes,
that's I think is a powerful statement. So we don't wait until everything just dissolves, but we are doing it now. Wonderful. I think it's a wonderful insight that we don't have to wait for future to make it happen. Yeah.
So Russia doesn't like Poland for the last 5 centuries, no? And what? You will wait until they start liking Poland and you will do this, or?
We lost hope.
Yes, yeah, we lost hope. Yeah, thanks, Andrzej, for that wonderful question and also that personal but also Brussels perspective. You mentioned entrepreneurship and drones and cutting edge research. I'm looking at Alona. What about social entrepreneurship? This is your specialty. You are researching it here, also in Ukraine, but also in Poland. And we spoke actually before you came. We spoke in Polish, and Igor spoke in Ukrainian, but we could have understood one another. So, what about social entrepreneurship? What's the plan?
Actually, within my current project, I conduct interviews with social entrepreneurs in the UK, Ukraine, and next stage it will be in Poland. And every time I'm impressed, I'm inspired from each of this interview, because these people in this hard time, they do crazy things. Now it's very hard to run a classical business in Ukraine, but social business, when you try to reinvest some part of your profit to solve some social problem, it's a lot of time harder. And actually, now in Ukraine, if we talk about veteran social business, we have new law project about veterans entrepreneurship, so which will help veterans and military to set up own business now and in the near future. We don't have any legislation and what is social enterprise. And I can say, I see one of my colleagues here, we discussed several days ago that a lot of European countries don't have this definition of what is social enterprise. But it's really, for me, it's like innovative activities. So when person or group of person do some activities, helping other people and make profit, reinvest this profit for the social mission, it really can help to redevelop Ukraine, rebuild Ukraine, and not really in the near future. We should do it now. And within also my project, I try to understand challenges faced social enterprise entrepreneurs now. And one of the challenges is knowledge. Moreover, it's like understand what kind of support. It's not only about money, it's about knowledge they can find in different organizations, different global organizations. Not a lot of social enterprise know about some global social entrepreneurship organization which can support social entrepreneurship in Ukraine as well. And according to this, I think one of the first step should be like to share knowledge about what is social entrepreneurship, why we need it, what it can help to solve a lot of social problems, and how we can develop this sector in our Ukraine, like social sector or solidarity sector like in Ukraine.
Oh, wow. Thanks for that word, solidarity, solidarność in Polish. That's an important word that resonates also with with our hearts. I'm looking.
Can I just say one other thing to answer the question? And yes, there is an OXUA incubator here in Oxford, helping to mentor companies in Ukraine through OUI resources. It's run by Latvian. I was talking to the Ukraine ambassador here, Vadim Pristaiko, who's an electrical engineer like me, about autonomous vehicles in Ukraine, which I think is something that's really going to happen. But the one thing I want to say, we can all do something. And I think what is important in a university or a social context is to try and bring some of the Russians that are here in Oxford together in the same room. These are young people in their 20s who at worst are neutral about what Putin is doing, at best are absolutely hate what he's doing, and they feel very exposed because they're Russian and so on. And what I'm doing under the radar, as the expression we use, try and get those people together, because peace will come from young people of Ukraine and Russia working together. Yes, the peace conference in Switzerland was very important, but if you come across Russians who are open-minded, who want and are able to bring them in, and so being president of Kozak can do that, but it's one-to-one. It's not in the we won't be able to do it with this many people. Absolutely. It has to be. And what you discover is those Russians, you know, the two or three I've met had grandparents in Ukraine, or their best friends were from Kiev, and had actually been many times to Ukraine before the war started and so on. So I think we have to think about that hope. How is it going to happen? And it's young people meeting, understanding that actually they share the same passion, the same hopes and so on. It's just in Russia are very unfortunate with who they have running the country at the moment. And we can all do that. We can all try and see whether we can get those people into the same room and facilitate the conversations. Because yes, it is at the level of Zelensky that these things will happen eventually, we hope, but the reconstruction, the conversations can begin already between young people who are willing to listen to each other.
Yeah, for years we have been organizing a summer school, a leadership summer school for students from Ukraine, Poland, Slovakia, then all over that region. And then at some point, students from Oxford started attending that conference. And this is actually our history, why we are here, because of those students, because of their connections. And then we saw that, well, we might also build those connections on our level of professors. I'm looking at the audience. Any more interventions, questions? We will finish at 2 sharp.
May I just to the remark of Professor Tarasenko about the Russian. So I was in 2018, Ukraine joined European Commission Horizon 2020 project, associated country. I was PhD student. I said, wow, I want to do that. So I tried to find I traveled like I bought a lot of tickets on all brokerage events in Brussels. And I was just walking around, trying to say, oh, we can do that and that and that. So, and then first project I won, and I traveled there, and I was super hyperactive. I was saying, no, we need to do that and this in deliverable. Let's do that. And they were saying, like really reputable people, big sharks in European project. They said, Igor, you think that we need to deliver science or products or innovation? No, Horizon 2020 is created to have science in Europe, not wars, right? So, and I've been thinking about that phrase for 6 years. So basically, research and innovation, science, academic collaboration, all the time is the platform to communicate, maybe because academics are capable of communicating for mediation of any problem, just because this criticality is a part of our academic path. So I do believe that this is an amazing thing. We need to communicate. Of course, I'm now assistant professor in Warsaw University Business School. We've got a few colleagues from Russia, and there was a evolution of our relationship. Right? we couldn't look at each other or something like that. Then we kind of started talking with water, then with coffee, then coffee with milk, so something like that, And
alcohol at some point?
Not yet. if your conference is annual, I will update.
Ukrainian vodka should be.
Yeah, please.
Thank you very much for to see my colleagues, and very thankful for you initiating and including the section on Ukraine in the conference. And currently we're working on this whole project that is looking at the all-inclusive recovery of Ukraine. And somehow it would be reflecting on what you have been talking about is when you're talking about inclusion of Russian people, we're talking about inclusive recovery of Europe, right? The inclusive recovery of the world. But how we can ensure that Ukraine, no matter at what stage the war is now, how we can ensure that every single member of society is included in terms of research and development, that the regions that are situated on the eastern part are not overlooked, because there are so many projects that are coming to Ukraine, including the academic cooperation and collaboration, that are mostly concentrated in Western and Central Ukraine, and much less for the historical reasons, because I'm initially from Kharkiv, and I have been working as an associate professor of environmental law in Warsaw National Law University in Kharkiv region, and our collaboration were mostly with the Russian speaking world, right, before 2014. And when 2014 happened, when the war started, we were somewhere in between, we didn't have these tight links with the Western academia as it is, and we have no longer the links with the Eastern, with the Russian state. So from your perspective, with the development of small, medium enterprises, right, with the development of the more research projects, how we can ensure that we are recovering and reconstructing Ukraine without leaving anybody behind, and with this, recovering the world without leaving nobody behind.
So it's the last question, but you raise stakes very high because you say that Ukraine might be not only the space for entrepreneurship and innovation, but also for the space of inclusion in general for the world. So with that question, let me ask our participants for just 30 seconds interventions. How can you respond to that challenging question? And it will be the conclusion of that wonderful panel. So Igor, let's start with you.
Yeah, just thank you for this question. I think that just yesterday in Ukrainian Cluster Collaboration Alliance, we had meeting with the IT cluster from Kharkiv, and they're one of the best in Ukraine, right? And I mean, Lviv cluster is really behind it. So, I mean, we are somehow segregated sometimes. Probably we don't see the whole picture. But I think that this decentralization is kind of a great thing, just because everyone is focusing on their strength. And the main concern is communication. We need to communicate. We need to have meetings. Lviv cluster must have meetings with Kharkiv IT cluster. That's we need to ensure, again, via research and innovation project, I believe, in which we...
Okay. Okay. We have water here just for the sake of discussion. Sorry.
Yeah, well, I want to spark off of what you were said about communication, because we're really being given a master class in this by President Zelensky. And things get the hardest job in the world right now. So I'm sure he's going to make a lot of missteps. But I was reading one of his earlier speeches. I think right after he was elected, his son came to him and said, the headline says Zelensky is president. He says, does that mean I'm president too? Because he shares that name, and he uses that anecdote throughout his speech to talk about not only does the president represent all of you, but all of you represent the presidency. And it was a wonderful way of elevating the people, his expectation of them, but also his the self-image he was encouraging all of them to have. And he's been doing a similar kind of thing whenever he talks to the West about democracy and these values that hold us together. So what I think is that we all have to call ourselves up to our highest selves, not our lowest selves. It's easy in a time of conflict to, I think, in fact, in a time of conflict, the default is to go to your lowest self. That was my experience at the Warsaw train station. You know, then I had to get out of that. Okay, it's not just enough to be upset with bullies, but what is my highest self? Well, my highest self is I'm going to find solutions. Let's find solutions. That's, again, like Professor Lionel was saying about, you know, you have this emotion, but then your brain has to kick in and say, what am I going to do about it? So that's what I would say. I'd say your president is giving us a master class on how to communicate that includes people and also elevates us to our highest selves.
Yeah.
Probably I can add that engagement with community is extremely important. And if you talk about social entrepreneurship, it's about social capital, it's about communication, it's about trust. And I participated in one NATO Washington summit in London. At the British Academy this Tuesday. And one of the panelists said that we are looking forward to when Ukraine will join NATO or NATO will join Ukraine.
Oh, wow.
So now we really can say that this war show us like the power of community, the power of people. When we united all together, and we can do really crazy things.
And the last word?
Well, I thought it was better for learners because it's far more about what I was going to say. I think there is education. People don't understand really the regions of Ukraine, and being a buffer zone on the east and so on is a very uncomfortable position. Oxford probably knows more because the city is sort of twinned with Kharkiv. But I think there are many places, many people I talk to in this country see just Ukraine as a whole. But in fact, it's quite different being in the west near Poland to being Kharkiv very close to the Russian border. And I think there is this understanding of what it is to be, you know, almost like the buffer zone between Russia on one side and NATO and Western countries, countries like Poland, and now belong to NATO on the other side. It's a very uncomfortable position to be really in the middle. And I think what we can do is educate people to understand that that makes it a special region within a special country.
Yeah, there's no way we can summarize the panel, and you see Pavel is already there. So I won't dare to summarize the panel, but let me ask you to join me in thanking our wonderful panelists for that wonderful atmosphere of solidarity, but also family. You mentioned your kids, you mentioned your wife, and we have a godfather. So,